Do you want to pick the perfect shade of white, but you're low-key struggling? Don't worry, we have all been there. Whether you are trying to select a singular color for your brand new house, or you're just trying to brighten up a dull and dreary room, whatever your reason, white paint is insanely difficult to choose because of all of its subtleties. And in this video, I aim to help you choose your perfect shade of white and help you get away from some of the mistakes that I have commonly seen. Now, who am I? What am I talking about? How do I know about white paint and how elusive it can be? Well, my name is Tash. I'm an interior designer, and I actually worked in the paint industry for 5 years, so I've helped hundreds of people just like yourself select the perfect shade of white. Now, if you are someone that loves interior design and would love to be a part of more design adventures with me, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. But if you are just here for the white paint content, that is totally okay as well. Just make sure you go ahead and hit that like button. Now, let's first discuss some of the biggest mistakes that I see as an interior designer with people selecting their paint colors. Probably the craziest being how tiny some of the paint swatches can be. And I'm not meaning just like the normal ones that you get at the paint store. I mean, some people have come in with sizes smaller than a penny and asked me to color match it.
Look, I don't mean to be rude, but this is not as easy as it looks.
Now, although this is challenging, to say the very least, the problem with having a small sample swatch, even the ones that you get from a paint store, everything else around you, whether that be the lighting, other colors, or other things in your space, are going to kind of have an influence on how that sample ends up looking to you. So having something super duper small means that you are going to be influenced by other things and you're not going to get a true read on what that color actually is. On top of that, if you only select a color that you see online, the actual colors you get from the lighting of your screen are very, very different from the tints that someone uses when they're tinting paint. So the best thing to do is to go for a much larger sample size and even get a paint sample if possible. The next big mistake that I often see people doing is not considering fixed items and furniture or new furniture they are planning to add into the space as to how the shade should turn out. What am I talking about here? You may have seen a recently renovated home that maybe it was from the 70s and they've painted it all nice white and grey, but then they have this really fugly looking heater that is this disgusting looking cream and it looks dirty. This would have looked okay in a cream space, but because they've updated the space and haven't considered some of the fixed elements in the space, it makes that heater look like it needs to go. It probably looked okay beforehand with an all cream room, but because they changed the tone and the brightness of the space, it changed how you felt about that piece. And that is the same with things like tiles, appliances, furniture pieces. I remember my mum used to have an all cream home and she had all this red timber furniture, which looked really nice. But then when we moved to a modern home, that red timber furniture did not look nice with the albeit pretty blue looking walls, and so there was a bit of a clash happening. So you have to consider what you have in your space, what you intend to have in the space, and what is not going to be changing in that space either. The final mistake that I see so many people making is not considering the lighting in their space. If you have a space that has very blue, cool toned lighting and you do not like it, you should change that out first before you select your paint color. Lighting has a huge impact on how we perceive things that are on our wall and just the color of things in a space. So if you change that blue lighting out for something that's a little bit warmer, you'll feel like you just went ahead and put brown on your walls because the color will change your perception of it so much. When you are talking about lighting colors, we're talking about kelvins. So with that blue lighting, that might be around the 5,000 Kelvin mark, but you might move to a 2,700 Kelvin mark, which is warmer. Keep those things in mind. And as a quick little tidbit, I personally recommend staying with the same sort of Kelvin range to keep things looking consistent in either an open plan space or just a singular room as well. So if you have variation of lighting in your home, keep that in mind when you're selecting your paint color. So now that we've gone through some of the biggest mistakes that I have personally seen, what do designers do instead when they're selecting their paint colors? Well, when it comes to paint samples, they will typically go for a minimum size of an A4 square of paper when they are getting the sample of paint. or they will make sure that they always get a sample pot and paint it in the room or on the walls that they choose. The reason why we want to make sure that we have that larger sample size is, again, to make sure that we can see all the color that is within it and not get influenced by everything else around us. You'll be able to see whether or not it throws a certain hue like magenta, and you'll be able to understand, okay, I can see a little bit of brown here, I can see a little bit of this, a little bit of that. When it's so tiny, we can't really see that. If you plan to get a sample pot, which I would highly suggest doing before you commit to a paint color, usually they're around the 500 ml range, and you want to be using pretty much all of it. You do not want to have a single drop left unless it's for touch-ups, and that is a pure backup. You want to make sure you put a large enough square on every single wall in your space to get an understanding on how the color and also how the light affects said color. On top of that, you want to make sure that you do 2 coats with that paint, because if you only do 1 coat, especially if it's not a great brand, the color underneath will seep through and influence your decision making. So sometimes people might choose a color, but then they'll paint it on the wall and they'll be like, why does that look so much more pink? It's because we did not do the multiple coats that were necessary for the space.
That's terrible. Yeah. Happens every day.
Now, going back to that heater example, of course, that's a little bit of an exaggerated version, but think about whether or not you want a contrasting or harmonious space. If you like spaces that feel more consistent and inviting and smooth in comparison to a space that feels strong and contrasting, you'll have to take into consideration the items that you already have, the fixtures that you already have, and anything else you plan to buy. If you already have a walnut timber furnishing, you'll have to consider how that walnut color will look against cream, against a beige, against a taupe, against a really stark looking white, because that is going to change how you feel about those furniture pieces in the space. You may love them beforehand, but if you select the wrong shade of white, you'll end up hating your furniture or the heater later on, and then you'll feel like you'll have to do a full house renovation. And we don't always want to be doing that. Now, if you want to do that, no problem. That is fine by me. But if you're only intending to brighten up your space, make it feel cleaner, or make it just feel a little bit more updated, you do need to take this into heavy consideration before painting your walls long term. Paint color should be probably one of the last things that you choose, because it is much easier to switch out in comparison to a fabric, a material, a light source. So paint is numero elastico. I've spoken a little bit about warm and cool toned things. Usually most people will know whether or not they like warm or cool toned items. However, if you are feeling like you're struggling a little bit, I want you to think about your favorite color in the entire world. Now, I want you to think about the warm toned version of it and the cool toned version of it, and figure out which one is closer in terms of if it's warm or cool. So warm tone colors, yellow, orange, red. Cool tone colors, green, blue, purple. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about color theory, I have this great video right here that I did recently. So if you'd like to learn a little bit more about color theory and how to use it to your advantage, definitely check that one out after this. But think about which shades you prefer and whether you prefer cooler tones or warmer tones. Now, if you're still struggling, especially when it comes to whites and neutrals, another great way to figure out whether there's a certain color in the shade that you have selected is to go ahead and get a white piece of paper. Make sure it's not bluey purple looking. Make sure it's like a pure sort of white looking paper. Cut out a square in the middle and put it over the top of the sample that you have. The reason why you want to do this is because you have this pure white directly over the top of the sample color that you like. It'll give you a bit of a clearer mind to actually see the colors that are coming out of it. So it'll take a little while to actually sit there and think and look at it. But if you look at it long enough, you go, okay, what colors does it look like? Well, it looks like it's got some brown, some yellow. It looks a little pinky as well.
It's a tough call. They're so different. Both those belts look exactly the same to me.
Now I've just mentioned tints, and if you are at the paint store currently, you can ask the sales clerk about the formula and ask them what colors are in it. Now you don't need to know the entire formula, that is not important, but you do want to know what tints are in it. So there might be black, there might be umber, blue, magenta. The reason why you want to know is to understand what colors are in there, how they may interact with each other, and what hues may throw. So if you don't like magenta and there's a color that has magenta in it, it may not be the right color for you unless there might be something that contrasts against it. So maybe there's some blue in there that'll help counteract it. Now, speaking of blue tint, 99% of paint brands will have a black tint that is blue based. So if you go ahead and find a formula like, I don't know, Dulux's Lexicon as an example, that only has black in it, what do you think happens when this black tint only has white added to it? It turns into baby blue. Look, baby blue is a beautiful color. I actually love baby blue. You might have seen my channel. It has quite a bit of baby blue in it. I love baby blue. But baby blue on walls when you were expecting white, not cool. Honestly, I think Lexicon is the most hated color in most interior designers' handbooks for this exact reason, because there is so much customer dissatisfaction with this color. It's actually insane. But for some unknown reason, architects and builders absolutely love the color. I do not understand it. It drives me insane. I have a vendetta against the color Lexicon because it drives me absolutely insane. Because you think you're getting white, you're thinking you're getting a very slight gray, and then you put it on your walls, baby blue. Baby blue. So that is the importance of having an understanding of color theory and also knowing what is in the shade that you like. Apologies for the little tangent. It's just something that really drives me insane. Because the thing is, if you choose the right color, it can truly elevate your space and make it feel so much nicer. Now, if you want to elevate your home a little bit more, not just in regards to paint color, I have a free elevated checklist and guide down below for free. It has a little checklist that helps you tick off some of the things that will help elevate and really stylize your home. And on top of that, I have a little guide that has trendy, thrifty, and timeless pieces. So no matter what you prefer, there is always going to be an option for you that you can at least get some ideas from and really take your space to the next level. But back to our white paint. Apologies if you can hear a vacuum in the background. It always happens as soon as someone turns on a camera. Someone else in the world just goes, you know what, I need to make noise right now. But we will continue on. We're almost done with this video. I just want to give you a little bit of a indicator as to what is normal, because a lot of people feel bad about how many paint samples they'll get. On average, I saw a usual customer get between 2 and 5 sample pots before deciding on the perfect shade of white. That is not to say that I haven't seen more. I think the most that I ever saw was this woman when I first started doing color consultation, and she actually selected 25 paint pots. It was crazy. But, and although this may sound wild, she had a massive house. She did not want to get the wrong color. It took her over a month to select the paint color that she really truly liked. But in saying that, it was cheaper for her to buy those 25 paint sample pots than to go ahead and select the wrong color and have to repaint. So do not feel bad if it's taking you long. Do not feel bad if you were having to take a little bit more time at the paint store than you expected. It does take time, and it takes a while for your eyes to adjust to see the subtleties of colors. So don't feel bad if you end up getting more than 5 sample pots. It is very, very normal. But in saying that, if you do genuinely feel like you are struggling, color consultants are a absolute godsend. We will come into your home with some samples, have a look at it with you, understand whether or not you do like those warmer or cooler tones, and give you recommendations based on that. Now, if they are only giving you the most popular colors that you've heard of 10 times, they are a bad color consultant. Get rid of them. Get a new person. I know it costs more, but A good color consultant will give you the most obscure color sometimes because it will be perfect for your home. They can register it and pick up on small things. I remember the first time that I ever saw a color consultant when I was younger, she actually looked at our fireplace and saw that it had a little like pink flower on the fireplace that even we didn't even notice. But she used that color to help select the color for the rest of the home. And although it was only a very slight magenta, it actually tied in really, really nicely with the home. So if you are really struggling, make sure you go ahead and get a color consultant. That is what they are there for. Okay, let's get into a few technical things that you may have seen. LRV, what is that? You might have seen it on the back of the card, you might have seen it on a website. LRV is light reflective value. And with a higher light reflective value, it means it's going to look brighter and bounce the light off more. So if you've got a really dark looking space and you want to brighten it up, getting a shade that has a high LRV will help you do that. Now, in saying that, if you have a space that has a lot of bright white light coming in through, the window, natural light, then you might want something that is lower, because otherwise, if you choose something with a high LRV in a bright space, you're going to feel like you're staring into the sun in like the middle of the day. Have you ever like driven past a house and you've seen like, it has the white and black high contrast look, but the white is so bright you feel like you're about to have a car accident because you're just getting this glare that's coming off of it? That is because it has too high of an LRV value. So although it's not something to be like super duper concerned about, if you are really wanting to brighten a space or just make a space feel like it's in the right range, LRV is where that comes in. It's not something that you need to focus on completely, but in certain situations you do. Now, on top of that, you have probably heard of all the different sheens. So sheen is pretty much how much reflectivity or how much gloss there is on the actual finish. So you've got matte, eggshell, low sheen, satin, semi-gloss, gloss, high gloss. That is usually the range. Sometimes people switch them around and stuff depending on the brand, but that is the overall range of them. And some brands will only have a couple, some will have many, many more. If you have a space that really needs to bounce light around, then you'll want to go ahead with something that has a higher gloss value. So on average, most homes will have a low sheen on their walls, and then you probably will see a semi-gloss or gloss on trim work. But sometimes you may even go higher than that for specific reasons like bathroom. Now, although there are design elements around it of, okay, low sheen or a satin might be really nice for a very dark room that needs to add some more brightness and bounce that light around. Great. There is also a functionality aspect, which I would prefer you to think about rather than the design aspect. If you have children, if you have pets, if you yourself just so happen to be an absolute mess no matter how hard you try, trust me, I am the same person, you will want to go with a higher sheen level. Do not go for matte or eggshell. You have been warned. They will market to you that matte is now washable, that eggshell is now washable. It is all a lie. It is marketing. I know I sound crazy. I know I do. But that is all a lie. You want to go for a low sheen and above, because otherwise you're going to have marks everywhere on your walls. Everyone's going to know exactly where you've been because your marks will be there. I would rather you think about the functionality of the space than the design of the space, because function matters more than design. Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm completely skitzing out in today's video, but we have one final thing to talk about, and that is direction-based color theory. Now, if you've seen a couple videos like this, you may have heard of someone saying, oh, if you have a north-facing home, you should go ahead and select colors that are warmer to help warm it up because of the light. Now, if you have a south-facing home, you should choose cooler colors because otherwise it'll feel too warm. If you have an east-facing home, then it'll be bright in the morning and then cool in the evening, and then the reverse for the west. I personally was so confused by this because I live in Australia. I am Australian. It is the opposite in Australia. So if you have a north-facing home, great, life is good. South-facing, meh. You're in Melbourne, you're depressed. Honestly, when it comes to direction-based color theory, I would not be placing too much emphasis on it. I personally never really focused too much on it myself. Don't get me wrong, there are some attributes to it that do make a lot of sense, and if it makes more sense for you, go ahead and use it. However, for me, I wouldn't use it as my only way of selecting a color. A lot of the time, even though direction-based does make sense, a lot of the time there are other things and other factors that can actually have more influence. I remember I served a customer and they had all this great green bushland around their home, and they had these big, beautiful windows. And the green bushland made so much of an impact on the walls, no matter what color they put up, which was all whites, it always looked green. So we had to use color theory to actually think, okay, what is the opposite of green? That's magenta. So we actually put up a very pink-based white on the walls to counteract all that green that was coming in. And it didn't matter the direction of their home, they just had so much greenery around that it actually made that much of an impact. So although direction-based color theory has its merits, it's not something to completely just oversimplify, pretty much, is pretty much what I'm saying. Just consider other things in your home, or other things that are around your home that actually might make an impact. Even a fence that is too close to your window will make an impact on the colors that it throws. So keep those things in mind. I hope this video has been helpful. I really, really do. I love talking about paint colors because it just takes me back to the days when I first started to really love interior design. And if you really do want to learn a little bit more about color theory, make sure you check out this one here. But if you are ready to learn about some of my favorite white shades at the moment, make sure you check out this one here. And I will see you on the next design adventure.